And now we turn to Paul Larudee. He is the co-founder of the Free Palestine movement. And they've put together another flotilla and are about to attempt to sail to Gaza to break the Israeli blockade. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Pleasure to be with you, Scott.
Well, it's great to have you here. And a note for the audience, maybe a little bit of background noise. We have Paul on the phone live from the JFK airport, where you're on a layover waiting to head out to the Mediterranean Sea region, if I got that right.
That's absolutely right.
And then, as I said in the introduction there, you are the co-founder of the Free Palestine movement. And can you tell us, Paul, what exactly is your involvement in this newest effort to break the Israeli blockade of Gaza with this new flotilla?
So, yes, we have a delegation of U.S. citizens that it's only 5 that are participating. We were expecting to have 15 originally, but we had to revise that because of problems in procuring the vessel that we wanted. Better known is the U.S. boat to Gaza. They have more passengers on board. They're exclusively an American ship, and they're flying, and it's an American flag vessel. But there is we're participating in an international ship. That is to say, the ship represents multiple nations, and so they need a delegation of U.S. citizens as part of that, and so that's what we are. That's what we're doing.
I see.
Yeah.
It's Anti-War Radio. I'm talking with Paul Larudee. He's co-founder of the Free Palestine movement. And now, how many people altogether on the different boats? In fact, how many different boats are involved in this latest flotilla effort, Paul?
Well, even at this late date, it's difficult to give you a precise figure because some boats are running into difficulties with authorities, and we may yet run into difficulties. And at the same time, some boats are being in the process of coming in. So let's say probably between 8 and 10 boats will be in the flotilla.
Mm-hmm. And now I read that you participated in the flotilla that broke the blockade back in 2008, and you also were a victim of the Israeli attack on the Mavi Marmara and associated ships a year ago. Could you tell us those stories briefly?
Okay. Just a quick correction. I was not on the Mavi Marmara itself.
Right.
I was part of the flotilla, and yes, we were all attacked by Israeli soldiers. Fortunately, or unfortunately, the Mavi Marmara was the only place the only ship that sustained casualties, but treated rather, let's say, maybe in some cases brutally. As far as the first voyage into Gaza in 2008, there are about 5 of us who worked together in order to plan and create this, and of course, obviously, we grew over time, and we, to some extent, surprised ourselves with the success of getting into Gaza at that time. There were 2 small boats that we took in there, and it was successful in breaking the siege. And then there were 4 other successful voyages into Gaza with one ship, one small boat, relatively small. And then the Israeli invasion of Gaza took place in late 2008 and early 2009. And the same ship attempted to return to Gaza during that invasion, and it was rammed before it reached Gaza and almost sank on the spot. It actually did sink later, but so that was those first 5 voyages were the only ones that were successful in getting into Gaza. There were several others later, always with one ship, until last year when the flotilla of 6 ships, followed by a 7th a week later, attempted to get in. And, of course, we know that it was attacked, and more than 700 people were taken prisoner and deported, and there were 9 fatalities and quite a few wounded, some of them quite seriously.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to divert off the subject too much, but when you talk about the Mavi Marmara case and that entire flotilla and what happened there, I think it's worth at least giving you an opportunity to talk about the official story as it came out in the media for the first week and a half or so. And then really the way it seemed from this end was that by the time the truth started coming out, by the time the prisoners started being released and telling their side of the story, it was no longer an issue. But really, the exact opposite of the truth was delivered to the American people for a week straight on all the cable TV news, for example.
Yes, that's true. We did have a few voices. Our delegation, we asked two of our people. This was Ambassador Ed Peck and Joe Medders of the USS, who was a veteran of the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty in 1967, to sign whatever the Israelis told them to sign and just get out so that they could speak to the press. And that worked out pretty well, although the first 24 hours they did not get out. But once they did, they were at least one voice that could be heard in contrast to the Israeli story. And then later, when we were all released, as you say, we were able to offer a different version, but by that time the story had died down and our voices didn't carry very far. However, the situation, I think, is not quite the way it has been told in many cases. I think that that it's possible that the Israelis attempted to board the Mavi Marmara by sea first from the small boats that pulled alongside. And when that failed, they brought in the helicopters. And the helicopters, when also failed initially because of the nonviolent work of activists, for example, taking the cables that were dropped from them and tying them to the ship. And since that made it impossible for the soldiers to get down, they brought in the thugs, which was the Givati Brigade, and they began assassinating people, presumably in order to clear a space for the soldiers to get down on deck. And it was effective in that regard.